Patty Ann says, we're all illegals because Native Americans were here first. True. True enough. True. So, what do we do about that? Let's take a look at the situation in Mexico. That's what illegals refer to, right? We're all illegals. How dare you say that Mexicans are illegals when you stole the land for Mexico? That's the La Raza argument. That's the argument for unlimited immigration. How dare you Caucasians and your Europeans put up a border here when we Mexicans were here before you? Well, first of all, if that border line were drawn 30 miles north, people wouldn't be crossing from Tijuana to get into San Diego because San Diego would be indistinguishable from Tijuana. The further north that border went, the more the world would look like Mexico, and people want to leave Mexico to come here. What they should have been praying for was that we'd conquered the entire state of Mexico all the way down to the Isthmus of Panama, and then Mexicans wouldn't want to be coming up here. We'd all be rich together. But no, that's not what happened. But let's go to this business about the only people that belong here are the Native Americans. Let's start with Mexico. We should give the land back. We should give. I've had this argument before. I love it. We should give Texas, for example. We should give Texas back to its rightful owners, the people who had it before us, before we Americans had it. Which means we should give Texas back to the Confederacy because the Confederacy owned Texas before the United States did. No. Nice try, Mr. Conservative White Guy. You have to give it back to the people that owned it before that. Oh, well, in that case, we have to give it back to the Republic of Texas because they owned the ground in Lubbock, let's say, before the Confederacy did. Keep going. Oh, I see what you're saying. We should give it back to Mexico. Yes. Why do we stop there? Is it because you're Mexicans and you want the land? Is that why we should stop there? Shouldn't we give the land back to the Spanish because the Mexicans basically rebelled against Spain? Shouldn't we give the land back to the Spanish who the Mexicans stole it from? But the problem with giving it back to the Spanish is the Spanish would have to give it back to the French because the Spanish stole it from the French. You know who the French stole it from? They stole it from the Spanish. Now, the Spanish stole it from a number of Native American tribes, some of which have familiar names. I don't know if the Mayans were quite that far north or the Toltecs or anything like that. But ultimately, you can go all the way back to, it's one of these men, it's like Piltdown Man or something. It's not Piltdown Man, but it's one of these prehistoric peoples. So the only people that have a right to that land are either, it's not Piltdown Man, but it's somebody 100,000 years ago, 70,000 years ago. It either belongs to them or it belongs to us because they had it first and we have it now. There's nobody in between that had a unique position. Mexico may have had it stolen from them, but Mexico stole it from somebody else. So there's that argument. If you can find some of Clovis, man, that's who it was. You find me some people, you find me some Clovis people, we'll have a discussion about whether the land goes back to them, but it doesn't go back to them because there are no more Clovis people because they were killed by people who became Mexicans. That's number one. And number two, when you talk about this thing with the Native Americans, this is the thing where liberals talk about, right? White man came here and took this pristine land away from the Native American who nobly sits on top of his horse with the rifle in his hand and surveys the buffalo herds, taking only what he needs, just the bare bones minimum, living a life of 100% carbon neutrality and total recycling and all that other stuff. So when you ask liberals about, I keep saying that, when you ask progressives about the Native Americans, ask them to describe a Native American to you. Describe a Native American to me who we stole the land from. And they'll tell you the same thing all the time. They'll say, well, he had a horse and lived in teepees and all that other stuff. And their names were Comanche and Sioux and Lakota and Iroquois and Blackfoot and so on. But the problem with that is that horses were brought to America by Europeans. There were no horses here before white people got here. There weren't any. So this idea of an Indian on a horse chasing herds of horses is not what was here before we were here because we brought the horse to America. Europeans did. There was no horse culture here. What was here were a series of tribes that constantly warred upon each other. And you find that the more primitive a society is, the more they're at war with each other. It's all the time. So yes, it's true the Cherokees were at war with the whoever they were bordering with, and so on and so forth, back and forth. But the Comanches, by the way, the Spanish took it from the Comanches. The Comanches took it from everybody. These people were at war with everybody. The Comanches would raid a rival tribe, and they would murder the men, and they would either rape or steal the women, steal the children as well, steal all the stuff, burn the villages down, all this stuff. It didn't start with us, So the question is, when you say it belongs to Native Americans, it doesn't belong to Cherokees, and it doesn't belong to Iroquois, because they weren't here. They conquered the people that were here before them, and the people that were here before them, and the people that were here before them, because the very first Americans looked like Mongolians, because that's where they came from. They came across the Bering Land Bridge. So it doesn't really belong to anybody in that sense. On some level, you can say it belongs to whoever's got it and whoever has it, which is why I'm in favor of a strong defense, frankly. People say, would you like it if somebody came and stole this land from you? I wouldn't like it at all, which is why I'm kind of big on aircraft carriers and bombers and rifles, because no. Now, am I saying that might makes right? No, I'm not saying that. I'm not one of those people that thinks that it's okay because we have the power. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is that to the degree that taking somebody else's land is a sin, that sin is pinned exclusively on modern white Americans. But the fact is, there is not a yard of earth that has not been taken over by somebody else through bloodshed, going back to Olduvai Gorge in Africa. There's not a patch of earth that people live on today that wasn't taken by somebody else. And when I hear Europeans say, what did you do to the Indians, you heartless bastards? My response would be, what did you do to the Celts? What did you do to the Franks? What did you do to the Angles? What did you do to the Saxons? What did you do to all the prehistoric people that didn't even have any names? I swear to God, if there's not a blood-soaked more portion of this earth than France, I do not know where it is. The blood and the conquest and the backwards and forwards and the taking and the retaking and so on 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 in Europe is mind-boggling. Same thing goes for Asia. There was the Mongols, and the Mongols were overrun by the Qin dynasty and the Qin dynasty and the Ming dynasty and this dynasty, and the frickin' Vikings come down. It's just the way it is. It's the way it is. What we didn't have until the modern day was we didn't have this self-loathing that is generated by this much prosperity and this much people who determine that they cannot defeat us militarily, so they have to defeat us morally. Am I guilty about living in America that used to belong to somebody else? I'm not. You know why? I didn't kill anybody for this land. And my dad didn't either. And even if my dad did, that wouldn't be me. That would be somebody else. So I'm guilty about the things that I do. I'm guilty about the actions that I take. If I thought that the war in Iraq was a war to gain Iraqi territory, I'd feel guilty about that. But it's not. And it wasn't a war for oil either, because we stood on the oil fields in Gulf War when Saddam blew them all up, and the U.S. Army sat on the richest oil fields in the world, and we put out the fires, and then we came home. So there you go. There you go.